ladies and gentlemen. I'm Admiral Ellis, and welcome to episode number 319 of the Zombie Train. This week we're fielding a question from Michael DeVillers, Mitchell DeVillers, my apologies, on oil, and the exact wording goes as follows. Oh, wait a minute. Mitchell DeVillers. This is from Buckeye Nation Railroader. Did something change here? Because I have it written down as this, and yeah, I'm confused. Buckeye Nation Railroader, it says. So I'm a little, whatever. Number one, this was the first question in his set here. So, you remember when I asked you if you had made the transition to diesels during World War Z? How long exactly did it take for you to get your hands of fuel oil? I assume you mean on fuel oil. Okay. So that's a good question, because I had to pin it down myself. And it was between 5 and... It was maybe 7 years, if I had to put a number on it, but it might have been longer. It's a blur. I won't lie. So, and I'm counting from after Zombie Train Incorporated started, because everything before that I have basically chronicled, and then everything's a mess. So, 2012 to 2015, I think, or 2016. Where's my timeline? So, okay, there were the few years before the Zombie Train Incorporated started. And obviously we didn't really worry about fuel oil then. Okay, hold on. And then the Zombie Train Incorporated, we were asked to start the Zombie Train Incorporated on, well, not on specifically, but in the winter of 2015 to 2016 is when they came and brought me to San Francisco. And then once I was in San Francisco, they, sort of laid their cards on the table, and as the story goes, I was like, okay, but where's Leibold? We went and found him. He'd been stranded in the desert. It was like early spring by that point. Then a lot of our minor operations began sort of pretty quickly, getting some engines that we had, or that we knew about, into operation within that first summer. And we had something sort of functioning by the end of the summer, and we were short on crews, but we had more engines than crews, and that was one of the few times that happened. Then we started restoring some other stuff. The next year was a lot of work on facilities in order for us to get engines that had been previously sidelined up to speed. And that took, a couple of years to outfit those facilities. We were moving pretty fast, but it was we had a huge amount of manpower that year. It was a huge upgrade from the year before, because they realized that we could do things, and we also connected a lot of these communities whose, in a lot of cases, the people there really didn't have much to do otherwise. They were doing, subsistence farming, and that was kind of it. So, we got people out of their little hermit holes along the rail lines, and so we had a huge influx of people. So then we put them to work the following year. That was 2017 and 2018. By the end of 2018, we had a lot of the main bulk of the fleet, at least under rebuild, if not going. And we had a lot of our bases already established at that point. 2019, more steam restoration. Yeah, 2019. So yeah, it was about 5 years in where we were like, we're going to need more engines, for sure. We went on our building craze, because at this point, most of the shops had been, they'd been used to death the engines that were going to get rebuilt were already rebuilt by 5 years in. And so then we started our build program. And the build program lasted, a handful of years. We had every major shop that we were using, and that was, okay, let's see if I can name some of them. Strasbourg sort of counts. I don't know why I started with that. So Toronto counts. Steamtown counts. We had another shop in the Northeast, and it was, we were using Selkirk. We were doing a little bit of work. Okay, so major shops. We had Selkirk, Steamtown, one down in Kentucky, or no, thereabouts. One down south, but there was only one down there. We had Denver, we had Cheyenne, we had Portland, or Tillamook really, but Portland. What are the other ones? I'm trying to remember. There were a bunch of museums that we converted, and I guess I lost track of. Them. There were at least a dozen major shops that we had making steam engines during the period of 2018? Starting in 2018? Alright, now I need to count again. So, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th. So, yeah, 2020 then was when we started building new engines. And that continued on for a couple of years. It became apparent that the steam engines were not going to be... not that they weren't all they were cracked up to be, but it became apparent that steam engines weren't necessarily the best choice going forward permanently. Because the shops that were making engines started to get impeded by engines that needed to get maintenance. A lot of the times that was passed off to some of the minor shops, like I mentioned, but a lot of the time it wasn't really possible to do that. So, the build program started slowing down. At the same time, we realized that we had an opportunity. The Navy had contacted some people that were, chemical engineers, that sort of thing. People that knew what they were doing when it came to oil refining. And this part of the story I've told before. So this was in 2022-ish, I think. We might have heard murmurs about it in 2021, 2022. No, it wasn't 2022. 2023 early spring. Because as soon as we could get the ships all worked up, that's what it was. Okay, so in 2021, the idea was brought to us. And it was, hey, there are these people that, they might be able to help you. And we were like, okay, that's really cool. We need to go across the ocean to get them, so wait on that. Because at this point, the Olympia was under rebuild. We also had high hopes about the Texas, but that didn't come through until way too late. That wasn't done until years after. But it was, we have two ships that we use a lot of. That's the Constitution and the two Liberty ships. The John W. Brown and the Jeremiah O'Brien. One on each coast. So I was like, okay, we've got a Liberty ship in position, we've got the Constitution to escort it. But I don't like those odds, because we had heard, there was a lot of espionage going on in Europe that the Navy was reporting on, and that they were telling us so that we knew what to expect if we went over there. Because they expected us to jump on this operation. When we didn't, they were kind of disappointed. 2022 came to pass, the Olympia kept getting pushed back and back, and meanwhile things in Europe broke down, and that's what forced these guys, that's what put them in a tight spot. So, that forced our hand. We wanted to go during the winter, but the weather just didn't permit it. We had a mildly kitted out Olympia, a Liberty ship, and the Constitution. We got them across the Atlantic and back in early 2023. We had the engineers in-house, finally, and they started work over the winter of 2023 to 2024, putting that, rebuilding some oil refineries that were in Texas originally. It was the place they started. And so we had workable fuel oil for diesel engines by about mid-2024, which is, what did I say? That's 9 years. I knew it wasn't more than 10. 9 years after, 9 years after the Zombie Train Incorporated started, 12 years in total after the Great Panic, and then we started to transition our fleet over. We went for diesels that were easy to work on, easy to get working, because, they'd all been sidelined for over a decade. For the most part, they'd all been sidelined for over a decade. So it was definitely some effort, and we had to transition out of our steam building phase, which was kind of a hard thing to do for Wybold and I, being very nostalgic, etc. But that also meant that while we didn't downsize shop crews immediately, it meant that shop crews very quickly became a lot more efficient. Working on diesels is a lot quicker. But we did have to have that whole transition period, this retraining period. Some people just left, which was fine, because we didn't need all those people. And then some people got shuffled around. The people that really wanted to keep working on steam engines, they got shuffled into some of the smaller shops, which are still doing steam operations until the very end of major steam operations. We still have a steam shop here in Quonset. This is I would call it one of the minor shops, because we never built a huge facility here. We mostly made use of other large facilities that we could get our hands on. One of the facilities we did use was Bellows Falls, actually. That one pops into mind. That was one of our New England facilities. Then again, none of the New England facilities were very large. East Deerfield saw some service. I don't know. I could just go around naming rail yards, because most of them saw operation for us in some capacity. But ultimately, there were only about a dozen major shops that were actually being used to build engines. Because, that was a hefty task. And the boilers and stuff themselves, the things that were cast, they were made only at one or two foundries and then had to get shipped out. Because we really didn't have the capability to run, more than a couple steel operations, steel mills and foundries and stuff. So, but yeah, so I'm glad I was able to answer that concisely. I've never put that on the books before, but I probably should have. But that, 12 years after the Great Panic is when the steam era started to end. Technically it hasn't ended, but that's when the downsizing began. So, yeah. What else is there to say, really? I'll take this to do a bit of channel admin. I had a little bit of what you might call an on-the-job accident, and hurt my finger pretty bad, and I was out of action pending infection. Hopefully it heals up without that. And that's why this is so late, and I apologize. But it is what it is. It really just put me down. I spent a lot of time in the horizontal position. So, yeah. It's awful, though. I think back to the way things were in 2014. That was a high point for us. That was, 2014 was the past. 2015 we came back, we did all this stuff. If I cut my finger like I did, I probably would have just wrapped it in a bandage and kept going, because we had no other choice. But these days, it's like, let me lie down for a couple of days. I get so complacent these days. I thought for a long time that I would never take the luxuries of modern life for granted again, and here I am. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is the Admiral, signing off.